Tonight, an RCMP officer has been charged with aggravated assault against an Indigenous woman.
She always gave a hug. That's what I remember most about her.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kathy Merrick will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislature.
When you're in a room full of Indigenous people, everyone's just there to have a good time.
And sharing a laugh, the resurgence of Indigenous comedy in Winnipeg. Good evening, I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. A New Brunswick RCMP officer has been charged with aggravated assault for allegedly striking a Mi'kmaq woman last June during a course of an arrest. Christina Gillies of the Eskasoni First Nation was allegedly struck in the face last June by an RCMP officer in Richmond Corner, New Brunswick, resulting in 5 broken bones in her face and broken teeth. The Serious Response Incident Team, or CERT, investigates incidents involving actions of police officers and determines if charges should be laid. As a result of this investigation, CERT found probable grounds that the officer committed a criminal offense. On Monday, Corporal Andrew Whiteway was charged with aggravated assault and has to appear before the New Brunswick Provincial Court on October 2nd. New Brunswick RCMP Media Relations Officer Corporal Hans Willett told APTN News Whiteway is on administrative duties, and depending on the court case, RCMP will proceed with appropriate action in accordance with the RCMP Act. A man from the Elsie Buktuk First Nation was fatally shot by a New Brunswick RCMP officer. It is the 4th police-involved death of an Indigenous person in just 11 days. We will mention 3 in this newscast. On Sunday night at around 11:19 p.m., RCMP were called to a wellness check at a home in the First Nation. The First Nation is located about 160 kilometers northeast of Fredericton. According to CERT and New Brunswick RCMP, officers approached a man who was allegedly threatening to harm himself and was carrying a weapon. The man refused to drop the weapon and would not cooperate with police. One officer discharged a taser, which was not effective, and then the officer shot the male. The man was later pronounced dead. The Serious Incident Response Team, or CERT, is now investigating. One man from the Atakakup Cree Nation has died, and a police officer is in hospital after a shooting in the First Nation, located about 90 kilometers west of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. At about 6:45 a.m. on Sunday morning, Shellbrook RCMP responded to a report of an assault in Atakakup. When officers arrived, RCMP say a confrontation between a man and officers forced police to take cover. The man then fled inside a nearby home that had 2 adults and 2 children inside. Police surrounded the home, and RCMP's Critical Incident Response Team was called in. During the response, a firearm was discharged and the man was injured as a result. Officers provided life-saving efforts until paramedics arrived. However, the man later died of his injuries. One officer also received medical treatment for non-life-threatening injuries from the incident. Saskatchewan's Serious Incident Response is now investigating that case. On Saturday evening, about 150 people gathered in Wetaskiwin in Alberta for a vigil for 15-year-old Hos Lightning from the Samson Cree Nation. The vigil happened in a field behind a pawn shop where Lightning was shot by 2 RCMP officers. People held photos of Lightning and signs of protest against the RCMP. Flowers, stuffed toys, and candles were also placed. Lightning, who was missing earlier during the month of August, called 911 for help on August 30th, saying he was being followed by people who wanted to kill him. RCMP found Lightning with a machete and a knife, and an officer was able to retrieve the weapons from him and tried to arrest him. However, Lightning fled. 2 officers then found Lightning in a field where a confrontation took place, and 2 officers fired their guns. Lightning later died in hospital. Samson Cree Nation has called for the immediate resignation of both officers involved and stronger mental health supports in its First Nation. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team continues its investigation. First Nation leaders gathered in Winnipeg Saturday to remember Kathy Merrick.
He always gave a hug. That's what I remember most about her.
Several First Nation chiefs remembered Merrick's kindness and compassion, the hard work she put in to get a landfill searched for the remains of 2 First Nations women, her focus on advocating for better health care for First Nations people. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says Merrick's body will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislature before going home to her community of Pimachikamak Cree Nation, where she was chief. Dates and times for people to pay tribute to her will be given in a future date.
Her support was always so appreciated by Women's Council, and that she fought hard in everything that she did.
Being the voice, as I stated before, for the people who could not speak for themselves, the murdered and missing, the children that did not return home, and also the future generations that are yet to come.
Kathy was chosen by the chiefs, but she served all of us as Manitobans, because to her final moments she fought for First Nations people. And when First Nations people will be better off, all Manitobans will be better off.
The leader of the Bloc Québécois has added his name to those opposed to a nuclear waste disposal site at Chalk River, about 200 kilometers northwest of Ottawa. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Yves-François Blanchet was joined at a press conference in Ottawa Monday morning by Quebecois First Nation Chief Lance Haymond and Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Quebec and Labrador, Ghislain Picard. The Bloc leader says it makes no sense to have a nuclear waste dump less than a kilometre from the Ottawa River.
It is absolutely logical, and the minister himself already said the same thing, to have 1 million cubic meters of nuclear waste being placed at the surface of the ground close to a river, which is, at the end of the day, the source of fresh water for more than 5 million people.
In January, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission gave Chalk River Laboratories the green light to build a near-surface disposal facility to store low-level radioactive waste. In spite of the decision, this has not stopped local Algonquin nations from lobbying against the facility, saying it will negatively affect local wildlife and water supply and was done without proper consultation with First Nations. Haymond says pre-construction of the facility is already having a negative impact on local black bears.
Canadian Nuclear Laboratories has begun the pre-construction work for the near-surface disposal facility, which includes now blocking black bears from accessing their dens and setting up sound-deterring devices to drive away the wildlife. These actions are not only illegal under the Wildlife Conservation Act, but violate Algonquin and Anishinaabe customary laws and our profound respect for the wildlife that has coexisted with us on these lands for generations.
Picard adds Ottawa must live up to its commitment to consult First Nations before making major decisions like this one.
And that Canada has to abide by its own commitments, commitment which translate in the adoption of Bill 15 back in June of 2021, which really commands Canada to adjust its framework to align with the principles of the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And
APTN News reached out to the Department of Environment and Climate Change for comment, but did not hear back by airtime. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Get ready for trouble in the skies for Canada's biggest airlines. Air Canada is warning of a shutdown as contract talks with thousands of pilots are at a stalemate. Unless an agreement is reached by September 15th, a 72-hour strike notice or a lockout notice could be issued. Air Canada says it would start gradually suspending flights as early as that day. The union has been advocating for wage increases in line with their U.S. counterparts. And more labor trouble, this time by unionized workers with the federal government who is angry they are being told they need to come back to the office at least 3 days a week. Starting today, federal workers will be required to be at the office for at least 3 days, while executives will need to be on site for at least 4 days. The government says the new policy will improve performance in all departments, But public service unions say remote work has not affected productivity, and some workers say they've been told there isn't enough desk space for everyone. The unions are vowing to continue to fight the new rules and held a rally in Ottawa this morning.
Personally, I work in policy. I need to read, I need to think. In the office, it's not a good environment. There are too many noises, there are no privacy.
The reason why the complaints are around equity grounds, a lot of parents have to basically now juggle figuring out daycare spots. Public transportation is not reliable. Those who have to come, it's like added a huge level of added stress.
Union officials say they want the future of the federal public service to be more innovative, one that meets the needs of the public and also the needs of workers. That means being more inclusive with a better work-life balance. If you have feedback about that story or any other story, we want to hear from you. Here's how you can reach us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to www.aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. And you can watch this newscast anywhere, anytime on YouTube. Make sure to follow us at APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Indigenous athlete Shalea Valenzuela can now call herself an Olympic silver medalist champion. We'll have her in studio to hear more from her big win. Plus, 6 Indigenous comedians gathered in Winnipeg for a recent comedy show. We're back in less than 3 minutes. Stick around.
It's all about storytelling. It's so many laughs, and it's full body laughs.
Welcome back. The 2024 Paris Olympics were a games to remember as Canada won an unprecedented 27 medals. Among those bringing home some hardware is Shalea Valenzuela. She was a member of Team Canada's women's rugby sevens who took home silver in Paris. Shalea is also a member of the Shishat First Nation in British Columbia. She spoke to me recently from Victoria, BC. First off, congrats on your amazing win, Shalea. It's been a few weeks now to let it sink in. How does it feel to be an Olympic medalist?
Well, it's still one of those things that it's so hard to put into words. This last few weeks has just been a whirlwind of emotions. I did go traveling Europe after the Olympics, so now that I'm home, I feel like it's all setting in, and I just can't wait to see all my family back home, and I'm just counting down the days to go celebrate with my family back home, and I think that's when it will really settle in for me.
Awesome, that sounds great. Can you tell us a bit about your Olympic experience?
Yeah, so my experience was a little bit different than some of my other teammates. It was a roller coaster of emotions because basically I originally was just invited as a training partner to our Olympic camp in Auxerre. So I went there with the intention, to push my teammates to help them prep for the Olympics. And, partway through that, I was invited to travel to the Olympics with my team, still as a reserve. And with some injuries happening, I was able to dress for the quarterfinal against France, and we upset them there. So I got to experience that, and running out of the tunnel, having 70,000 fans screaming. I got to experience that all. And at the end of it, I'm just happy that I stuck through, and I pushed through, and, it paid off.
That's so awesome. Women's rugby sevens was a lot of fun to watch and a very physical sport. How did you come to be involved into the sport?
So I did sports basically my whole life. I've tried all of them through primary years, and I settled in with soccer and wrestling in high school. And, one year I couldn't get onto the wrestling team. So my science teacher, Mr. Dollywall, shout out Mr. Dollywall, he said, why don't you go try rugby after school? And basically I tried it the first day, and that week I had my first game, and I never stopped. And now it's been like 10 years, and here we are.
You just got hooked, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you think this win on an international stage could mean for Indigenous peoples and especially youth?
I think it's motivating. It should drive Indigenous youth, push and fight for your goals and fight for your dreams. It sounds cliche to say, but don't give up. Be proud of who you are, and you can do great things, if you back yourself and believe in yourself, and work hard.
Healthy eating and working out every day probably helps too a bit, eh?
Yeah, definitely. When you get to this level, it's the little things that count. But don't stress too much in your younger years. Have fun. I still enjoyed, my youth and had fun, and then got serious when I got into the program. So I wouldn't say don't stress too much about that stuff at a younger age. But when you get to the higher level, it's definitely good to focus on those little things.
Yeah, definitely. You're already back to training and practicing. What's next for you and the team?
So this year's going to look a little different. We do still have the World Series, but our program is going to be decentralized, meaning everyone's going to be playing either overseas, playing for university. I'll be playing for the UBC Thunderbirds. I actually have my first game tomorrow. So that's a nice step, taking a step towards varsity, because I did take some time off. But the program will still keep going from other places, and then we'll meet up for camps, starting with Dubai Cape Town camp this November. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to get back on the world stage.
Busy, busy, busy. And you also mentioned that you might be going back home to your home First Nation for something coming up.
Yeah. The band wants me to come out and, meet everyone and meet the chief, which I'm honored to do that. I'm just waiting to see a free weekend to head out there. But there's so many family members and friends out there that I haven't seen since I was younger. So I'm really excited to, bring my medal, show the youth and show the band, what I've accomplished, and sharing that with them.
Any lasting words for Indigenous youth out there?
I think just be authentic and be proud of who you are. There's things that we have to go through in life that are tough, and I feel like I can relate with a lot of Indigenous youth. But at the end of the day, what got me through is just being proud of who I am and learning to, embrace my culture. And now I can be a leader to other Indigenous youth, and I just want them to look up to me and see that it's possible no matter where you come from or who you are.
Tapway, yep, no, those are good words of advice. Shalaya, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it, and we wish you all the best on your future sports career.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you guys.
We have to take a quick break, but when we return, why 6 Indigenous comedians recently gathered in Winnipeg. That story when we come back. Stay with us.
Growing up, I didn't see a lot of Native people in media, but I did have a Don Burnstick cassette tape that I just played till it broke.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. From the north shore of Lake Winnipeg near Norway House, Cree Nation, Christopher B. Clark shares this incredible shot where the land meets the waters under the light of the sun. Keep those photos coming in by sending them to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over to the east, Halifax 21, Fredericton 21 as well. Cartwright 19, 16 in the Grand River. Val-d'Or 21, Saguenay 16. Windsor 25, Sault Ste. Marie 23. Timmins 23, Wawa 22. God's Lake 28, Puckatawagan 19. 31 in Winnipeg, Gimli 27. Estevan 27, North Battleford 21. Meadow Lake 20, Stony Rapids 14. Rain in Fort Chipewyan and 16, Peace River 19. 24 in Medicine Hat, Calgary 16. Tofino 16, Kamloops 24. 16 in Prince George, Smithers 20. Whitehorse 13, Old Crow 10. 14 in Yellowknife, Wrigley 16. 12 in Colville Lake, Sachs Harbor 3. 7 in Chesterfield, Baker Lake 10. And Iqaluit 8 and Clyde River 7. 6 of some of Winnipeg's best Indigenous comedians took the stage at the West End Cultural Centre in Winnipeg on Friday night. Our reporter Sav Jonza was there to have a laugh and meet some of the performers.
Taylor Page loves to make people laugh, especially with jokes about Indigenous culture.
When you're in a room full of Indigenous people, everyone's just there to have a good time. It's all about storytelling. It's so many laughs, and it's full body laughs.
She's part of the Bannock Bums, an Indigenous comedy showcase that's been making Winnipeggers giggle for the last year and a half.
I actually started off at a Indigenous open mic. I went to just watch, and the host, the comedian who puts that on, Paul Rablowskis, I was walking and he's like, "Taylor, are you going up tonight?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you should." So I did, and I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And it's really great just making people laugh.
On Friday, she and 5 others took to the West End Cultural Centre stage to poke fun at all things Indigenous.
I've got a dog. He's I love him. I don't really know what kind of dog he is, because he's what I'm sure most of you know, he's what's known as a res mutt. Yeah. Although he has been affected by being in the city a little too much lately. He only eats his kibble if there's Parmesan on it.
Proceeds from the event went to support the West End Resource Centre, a non-profit organization offering services like food security, employment assistance, and housing support to community members in the West End area. Jeff Gobeil was happy to lend a punchline to the cause. A social work student by day, he says there's been a resurgence in Indigenous comedy, though the comedians have always been here.
Growing up, I didn't see a lot of Native people in media, but I did have a Don Burnstick cassette tape that I just played till it broke. Had a huge influence on me. I thought if you had a recording on cassette tape that you were world famous. So to me, it was really cool to hear a Native person be world famous and be extremely funny. Comedy was a bit of a bridge between my parents who were divorced growing up, so me running around stealing all his jokes just worked perfect for a young me.
In Native culture too, like I said, we also have movies, lots of shows coming out, and they even just dubbed Star Wars officially into the language, into Anishinaabe. Did anyone watch this? Yeah, some people. Yeah, it's amazing. When the trailer came out, though, I was blown away by Native Chewbacca. I was stunned, man. Him and his crossbow there, big furry guy, being like...
Audience member Amanda Burwell isn't Indigenous, but says everyone should support Indigenous arts.
I just find that Indigenous people need to be more in the media and more represented, and Canada's multicultural, so we should accept our first culture, which is Indigenous, and then have everyone educated but also accepting of it. And you can get more accepting of it the more you're around it.
Gobeil says you can find out when more Indigenous comedy is happening through the Winnipeg Comedy Show's Instagram. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
This is your territory.
I definitely remember Indigenous Chewbacca saying that for sure. And that's your evening newscast for this Monday, September 9th. We'll be back again tomorrow for your midday newscast. Make sure to join us then. From our HQ in Winnipeg and from our reporters across the country, hi miigwech, Marcy Cho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Ekse.